So, welcome back, everyone. Break. You had a nice lunch. So we're at the Eiffel Summit. I wanted to take a little peek outside, and the idea with this one here is more start a discussion rather than me trying to lecture. We'll see how that goes. But I will do some kind of introduction, and I will talk about open telemetry, and also explain a little bit of why I'm talking about this. So I had the catchy title is Eiffel We're in the Future. We're going to start with a little bit of short introduction to OTel, Open Telemetry, and the traces. There are more to that one. And then we're going to see if we can dive into a little bit of discussion and your ideas around it. So if we take a look at what we have and why we're here, we have our trusted Eiffel. And when we use it then, it provides us with observability, as you see the chains, traceability, interoperability, and also these confidence levels. They're probably going to be part of an interoperability, but we have them. The community is mostly Nordic countries, maybe even can say Swedish, but not really, but it's quite a small community. Open Telemetry then, an OTel, it's a collection of APIs, SDKs, and tools. Historically, or it's hosted within the CNCF, Cloud Native Computing Foundation. And it was a merger between Open Tracing and Open Census in 2019. So as I said, it collects APIs, SDKs, and tools, and it's there to generate, export, and collect observability data or telemetry data, and it focuses on traces, metrics, and logs. Whereas we are going to look more on traces here. The metrics and log part is something I'm not going to touch. Because it doesn't really feel like it's corresponds to MRT. If you take a look at the community, these are basically 2024 figures, so they're probably even bigger, but they've got like 10,000 plus communities, thousands of code commits, thousands of pull requests, hundreds of thousands of contributions, and a lot of companies that are contributing. Geographically, if you take a look at that one, it's pretty spread out. Maybe focus a little bit on the Western world, but still spread it over the whole world. So it's pretty widespread. And since they started like in 2019, it has been a tremendous increase in companies contributing. We have companies like Splunk, Microsoft, and Lightstep that are the top 3 contributors, so they're big companies behind it. And they also have a lot of individual co-contributors, and that has increased also a lot. Another way to look at this one, probably this graph, where you see the amount of pull requests over time for different parts of telemetry, and it's increasing. Also, this figure with the amount of contributing companies and contributors you see is increasing. And again, this is like a 2024 figure. So there is a lot of people around working on this. Also, there is people speaking about it. We got people from Grafana Labs. They're thinking that the open telemetry is set to be the backbone of open source monitoring ecosystems. And when they're speaking there, it's mostly, I think they're starting looking at instrumentation of programs themselves, but it can probably systems such, because software systems today are pretty big. Somebody from ABS here says, open telemetry is establishing the industry standard to provide customers. So people are confident that this is going to be the future for observability. So what is new and why do I speak with it now? So basically here in end of last year, they made an announcement that OpenTelemetry is expanding into CI/CD observability. So we got this post here where they announced that you can actually now find semantic conventions even for CI/CD inside OTel. And that came within 1.27. They've also been out talking about this. So Dotan is one of the big evangelists probably for this. This first one here was from KubeCon in London in spring, and then it was over in the US. So there's quite a lot of buzz about this right now. But then also, if you take a look at other players outside, so for example, if you go to Jenkins, you will get plugins for sending OTel traces, and you can see here your like pipeline, how it's executing, and different steps in it. If you go to Dynatrace, and they also have a way to instrument their pipelines for using OpenTelemetry. And go to GitLab, they're explaining how to do it. But also, if you look to other places, you can find blogs. These are two just found. There are plenty more of how do you instrument your CI/CD pipelines with OpenTelemetry. So you might wonder, okay, how does this work, and maybe a little more details. So let's take us a little bit closer look. If I start firstly with a very simple pipeline, we have some push, we do some builds, and we do some tests. So in Eiffel, you probably have some subject to the commit event. When you push the commit, you probably have some composition and artifact created event. When you do build, when you're doing your testing, usually you have your test case triggered execution events. And when you're finished doing testing, you probably send some CLM events there. And as Magnus mentioned before in Santiago, we're going to get this confidence basis. So here you have all the events, you can connect them together on a graph. So this is Eiffel as we know it. If we look onto OpenTelemetry, I stole this slide from Magnus Beck's presentation. You can find it as recorded on YouTube if you want to dive anything more into it, and you can also ask him here if you have any questions. So in OpenTelemetry, they have something called traces and something called spans. So a trace is a collection of spans. And then a span describes what happened, when, and for how long. A span then can have relationships to other spans, and most notably, you will have a relation to its parents. And a span then has attributes that can give more information and can have you can use it for like aggregation and context searching and so on. So if you take our smallish example here, and I kind of tried to simplify it. I don't know if this is the best way to show it, but I'll try. We have our small pipeline, and we probably will have a graph showing how it looks like. We will mostly have a trace ID to connect all of those. And then you will probably, for the commit, you would have these version control semantics conventions defined then by OTel. So for example, ID, title, and state. When you run your pipeline, there is the CI/CD convention now, whereas pipeline names and so on you can enter in. For tests, there is also test conventions. So does this make sense? Am I losing you, or is there any direct question?
Do you send all of this as like one big event like that? Like these are a bunch of tiny events.
You would most likely send them kind of like when each task is done.
Okay.
With some gotchas I'm going to go through also. But maybe not one blob. But I'll talk a little bit more about that. Anything else? No. So another way, just to make sure I'm not losing and connecting the dots, when you're thinking of tracing and this, the Eiffel philosophy that we have, that is, you have a start event and you have a stop event. Basically, we have like a tip to start and stop, which is two different events. The idea when you go to OTel is you get a single message that says it started here and it lasted for this amount of time. So it's a start and duration, which is then you can't actually send something in the middle, but you need to send afterwards. Yeah.
So in terms of this, how should we call it, event? Well, based on these spans, right? So do you need to send all the span paths at the same time? Or can you sort of distribute them? One here and one there, and so forth, and still sort of connect them together? Or is the only way to sort of understand that a set of span is related to each other is to send them in one package form like that?
This is maybe more like the collected view afterwards, because in order to get the understanding, you need to collect them. Yes, but I would say you could probably send them separately, as long as you got this trace context, so you know how to link them together.
I believe a span has a parent span attribute, so they're connected.
So this is sort of a compiled picture after you have sent off a little, here and there information, and then you can collect them together.
Yeah,
As an aggregated view on the trace itself. But when you produce a trace, the different sort of events the different spans can happen at different time from different sources, and then you can sort of stitch them together into a combined view, which I'm showing here.
Yeah, as long as you have the elements to link together. Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
And this is done after the parent was finished. So we have the duration, and when you're done, then you send data what happened during this duration after. Because they don't have a small finish. Wait for the finish, and then you send everything.
Yeah. So basically, when it comes to the trace, that is compiled afterwards, I would say. But when it comes to the spans, yes, you would have to finish. For example, if you have a bill step, and that is a span, you would have to finish the bill step, and then send the information.
If one would do an analogy with Eiffel, would that be sort of a representation, for example, of activities or test cases and things like that? Things happen in sequence, and you can pull them together, for example, to have a combined view on things being run in a certain order.
Yeah, I would say
a trace of something that happened.
Yeah, I would say the closest thing that is kind of that would be activity events. Yes.
Or test cases.
Yes.
Where you have sort of test. You have different, the test suite combined by different test cases, and then you can sort of combine them together. So just have the structure.
Yeah. Where I would say this is mostly for like timing. When it's time involved, then this is pretty strong. I'm not aware that they have any like artifact concepts and so on. Then there are a couple of notes and observations when I was like kind of trying to search this a little bit. So the focus here is on observability, not interoperability. And the picture I'm showing here is kind of like usually a picture you will see if you dig into the OpenTelemetry, where you've got different resources sending OpenTelemetry data. You get some receiver, a processor, and then export it to different backends that would read it. So the kind of focus is then on observability then.
That question, why? I mean, if you're looking here, you have sort of a common language, you have a common processing thing, and then you have sort of different technologies. I mean, to me, that reads interoperability.
Yeah, I would say, but this is maybe down to definitions and so on. I would say that would be more like observability. We observe things. There isn't anything like defined triggers, for telemetry. And I would think of it like if you have Eiffel, you would say, I want to listen to this. Somebody listening to an Eiffel event would configure a listener saying, okay, I'm interested in all these events. But the OTel is more or less, I want you to hear this. For example, if you have some triggers or something, metrics and logs that want to trigger, for example, a Slack channel, it's not the Slack user that's configuring, saying, I want to listen to this, but it's somebody configuring it for you.
That's because they don't have any topic notion in their events.
You could probably get there.
Because if you do, then you have a point of interest as you requested.
Yeah, but it's more of there isn't this strong, like you have a specific event that you have triggers, but you have more like lack of words information blobs that you can then trigger on thresholds.
If the purpose is to observe, then that's fine.
Yes.
But that doesn't rule out that you have the capability of triggering.
Mm.
If you have topics, if you have sufficient information, there's nothing that states that you can't trigger or anything that is sort of sent off in this sort of observability context. I mean, it's just applying the right logic into it.
Yeah, you could.
I mean, but it's not made for it. But it doesn't rule out the possibility to do triggering if you like to.
No, it's not definitely, and it's not it wasn't, if you think of Eiffel, for example, it is there to, to trigger other things. That was kind of the main fundamental idea around it.
Well, if you think about an abstraction, then you are observing something, you are combining the information, and you draw a conclusion. To me, that is triggering as well. It's just a different process, human versus automatic.
Mm. Yeah, maybe.
Just challenging the wording here.
Okay, yeah. But yeah, maybe we can. We'll see.
I mean, in the far distant future, this sort of observability may be done by robots. When things need to be automated, you can still use the same framework, and sort of triggering becomes different, but with the same purpose. You find anomalies, you find things that is now humanly possible, but tomorrow may be sort of an AI robot doing the same thing.
Mm. And then the kind of question that goes in is where is April's role in that then?
For us to determine.
Yeah.
Just stating that OpenTelemetry might be sort of a human-to-machine only interface right now, but I believe it may not be so always. Things will move from human-to-machine interface based into machine-to-machine based interfaces, and those principles here should sustain that transition.
Yeah, I think most people that are there is, of course, a lot of people using this for human information, but I guess a lot of them are using for machine processing. Right there. Regarding this with your question about if something is happening in there in the start or the end, but spans then are exported at the end. So when you have a span, it's exported at the end. Also worth to note that if you use the default SDKs and so on, they will batch these spans and export them in that. So it's not really like the real time application here, but it's more for monitoring things. And I believe what they did, this is done then more for resource reasons, because if you're like instrumenting your code and it goes very fast, if you would send something out on the network every single time you do a run of it, you would have a lot of overhead. So that is why they batch it usually. I should also note that OpenTelemetry, they have started looking at long running tasks. When they started, their main focus was probably instrumenting code, which went through fast. So this with long running tasks wasn't really a big issue. But since they're moving out to bigger things, especially if you're going to CI/CD, they are starting looking into this. So it's worth to know. Then I just pointing out that there is something called events in OpenTelemetry. There is very little information about it, but it exists there. Just aware of it also. Then when we talk about events inside OpenTelemetry, you can have events inside of spans. So basically, for example, if you have a page load or something, and you want to mark like when a page goes inactive or a specific point of time, then you can have an event. So here, for example, you would have a span, and then you can have an event marking at a specific point. So going up in a little bit of discussion. Not have too much time, but let's start at least, and we can maybe continue later on. Some like of first reactions to this is, Bo, you've been arguing that this that there is a lot of things here that you can use for triggering and so on. But do you feel that
My first reaction is that currently the whole Eiffel deal includes a lot of message processing. But you haven't mentioned that. Is that a dead concept?
I would say that in OpenTelemetry, I'm not an expert in setting up infrastructure in OpenTelemetry. But if I go back to this picture, I would say it's more of you would have a lot of people, a lot of places you're sending your OpenTelemetry traces, and then you would have something that processes, crunching it, and then sending out to different backends. So it's basically servers and not really like message buses, because it's not a communication protocol really, but really like an observability protocol.
Do you must know who's received?
Point to point, like that. You send
Yeah.
your data here.
I would guess so. I'm not an expert there, but more in that direction.
Nothing's stopping anyone from writing an exporter for the OTel collector that sends it on a bus, for example. That's still
But
possible.
the creator of the data still needs to send it to the specific function first.
Well, you could have a centralized collector or aggregating collector that would be, the entry point for everyone. So, and then the sender wouldn't need to know where it shows afterwards.
Okay, yeah, from the base. Yeah, but that's not really a broadcast in itself. You can always add it afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, originally, the reason is you want to collect your request traces in your application, your HTTP server, and so on. That's the original intention, but it's modular, so it could be extended to be broadcast.
The green box could be send an Eiffel based on things you learn.
It fits a bit with the purpose of Eiffel. It feels as your intention of Eiffel is to send it close to the source.
Yeah, but the-
But yeah,
probably before. Oh,
you could maybe do that.
If you keep this picture up, so if you think about sort of, the information flow here, going from left to right, where would you say that the information ownership resides, or where does it end? I mean, it starts with, resource 1, 2, 3, and sort of goes through and then ends up. Do you think that the data sort of is supposed to end up in, one of these boxes, depending on whether it's sort of, blue, red, or green in nature? Or do you see that if the processing sort of splits up the information and part goes to, again, other parts go to Prometheus and third one goes to, so how do one sort of know where the data goes and who's sort of owning the data throughout its?
Yeah.
Is that important, or is specifying where it's supposed to go? Do one find all the data in Jaeger if one put something in here from the left hand?
So I would say that this picture is more generally, and it also concerns not only traces, but metrics and logs. So for example, if you have like a metrics, for example, like a CPU meter or something that spits out every like 10th of a second or something, that would be using the same kind of processing framework and so on. And then it would be ending up in Prometheus most likely.
But if you scale this up to have sort of, thousands of instances, and you have different ownership and God knows what, I mean, does this scale to usability, or was this just very cute if you had a small lab on your bench and, if you go industrial, it will just crack down?
With the amount of thousands of people using it today, I would say that yes, you would do it.
It does good.
I would be very surprised if they haven't solved that problem. I haven't been setting up this myself, but I would be very surprised if that would be a problem.
Well, it depends on, you may have very large numbers of instances, but each and every instance may be very small. This only sort of applies if you have an instance or an implementation that is by nature scaling to a very large entity. That's not true. We don't know how many of those very large instances exist.
No, but as it's widely used in all kind of scenarios. I probably should have dug into that one, but I didn't dig into the infrastructure part of this, but more of kind of the Eiffel versus OTel, so it's more protocol level.
But scalability is not an unimportant object there, because Eiffel is built to scale, and for comparison reasons, it would be interesting to know if this also scales together.
Yeah, I don't have the exact numbers, but I say yes, it will.
We can return to the topic. We can just keep it on the to-do list.
Yeah. Good. Anything else? Your first reaction?
Yeah, one question maybe to you then, or reflections. You there, I think you mentioned one thing of relation. One more. Do you see any combination?
Yeah. Maybe you're kind of like taking up in this question that I was having is today we have the activity finish and start as events, but the question is it more intuitive to have a time step and a duration, and basically is there something should we actually skip the activity events? That's kind of like maybe my first reaction to it. So a combination was maybe I'm not asking your question because you asked a combination. I'm asking of a competition.
No, but then I have maybe a big question, but I see people in here as well testing this, doing exactly what you're saying. They placing the OTel there, but they are still there. We're still saying we could connect these traces spans, whatever word I should use, spans with an Eiffel context. Or how you use the word context, but
Yeah,
I see a possibility to combine.
There could be.
Okay,
We have,
replace parts of it.
yeah,
That there is value other use.
But given that these activity events probably are used for any other purposes, event-wise, I mean, there's nothing hindering you from taking those events and transpose them into telemetry information and put that into, OTel kind of thing, right?
no.
Information is there. You just need to sort of have a representation of it as an observability event or information as well.
Yeah, I guess the competing part would be, for example, I don't know if Jenkins is the best way, but now there is a Jenkins plugin, and let's say that automatically gives you OTel information. How many people are interested in then going in and actually instrumenting their Jenkins plugin with Eiffel events if they already have OTel information?
And that's very simple, and that's because you don't create CI/CD flow with OTel events or any other sort of OTel related thing. I mean, that is mainly to make observability on platform and maybe sub application level, but it's not supposed to do instrumentation on CI level. What is it?
Maybe you missed the first part, Paul.
I did.
That was what Mattias said. They are now going into CI/CD.
Okay, yeah, true. If you missed it,
I sort of did that. Sorry,
where I say that it's expanding into CI/CD to CI/CD parts. So that is the new thing, and that's why I was talking about it. So yes, it is expanding into it. So that is when I heard this, that started got me thinking. This is the reason why I'm talking about it today. Is what will happen when that force goes into it, and what will happen to Eiffel, and how much energy should we put to Eiffel?
it's going to be very, very interesting because the notion of CI/CD pipelines are sort of application on top of an application. I mean, it's not like monitoring Jenkins. You need to do something a little bit above that. So it's very abstract. It's interesting to see how they would work in sort of this abstract level of CI/CD business logic layer of application.
Yeah, I mean for just looking different steps inside a pipeline, I would say maybe it's there already today. But if you look at bigger pipelines and if you want to weave in other concepts, then it is there maybe. A little bit. But if I go on. So yeah, that's my kind of like question is, I don't know if you have a feel for this during this time, but maybe a little bit of warning or it's something to think of is this something that should we ditch the activity events and let OTel happen, take it over?
It's a very good question. And as you say, already show it to Jenkins. We start to see it in GitLab and other traceability, observability of steps would probably then likely be taken over by this.
Yeah.
It still doesn't mean that other use cases we have.
I mean, it doesn't have to be one way or the other. But the fact is that sort of events meet sort of observability, and you can basically start bridging them. But you don't have to ditch things just because another one is sort of reaching out. You can instead create comparability between them to have mutual benefits and then see where the use cases go. There may still be reason for having activity events, but not for observability purposes, but for other purposes that we believe is useful. But it can still be used as a sort of a source to create observability information instead of having to do the same thing twice. You can use the event and transpose them into open telemetry information and sort of take advantage of that in case you have. So why do you need to do things twice or say one or the other? You can basically do maybe one with both. at least we know that Eiffel events can be used if you use the information to create observability information. But the question is, can you use the observability information to create the necessary activity events information? I think that's harder.
Yeah, maybe.
Or you did that sort of breaching as well. At least try to avoid duplication of work.
But then there's also the motivation of why you would be doing it. If you have one, why would you do the others? If it's already there, that's my biggest worry. If you got a lot of places that will sense it, maybe this is part of Eiffel that will be least used.
Processing of data, of course. I mean, if you have observability and if you have traceability to trace how things are working in time perspective, for example, you don't have that application either today. But if you take all the activity events and you put it together, you have a nice execution graph. You can see optimize your execution timing. And that you will do with the tooling that comes from observability, not necessarily the data source. So that's why you can use a lot of data sources you have already and use the observability as a means to analyze the data and view it in a different way.
Yeah, the kind of threat maybe would be if there is already tools that is processing OTel information and helps you there, but you have to write your own tools for Eiffel.
In this case, all the information, sort of the compute power that comes with that, can be somewhat tapped on for all the Eiffel events, and you can just sort of view the information you have in Eiffel and all the events from all the tools that comes with OpenTelemetry. Tracing, analysis, and so forth, things on, but to do that on a flow level that we haven't done before. It doesn't mean that you have to create those events from OpenTelemetry. You can create them from Eiffel events and just transpose them into OTel-based information and then process them from those tools. You will have instant value.
Yeah, but then you need maybe create a little bit of tools also.
That's fine.
Yeah.